sometimes I walk in the room like, God, the only one again. But I use that as a strength, right? Because they don't know my story. They don't know what I've gone through. They don't know anything about me. So this is my opportunity to sell me, to sell my organization, to sell the work that I do. But it's nerve wracking. I do it all the time now with my day job. I go to customer sites and I'm the only female, and it's a bunch of dudes in the group, and it's just like, here we go. But that's not a bad thing, right? Because it's forcing me to have more confidence and speak up and speak what I need to do. It's scary. It's scary as heck. I'm not gonna lie, but it's been very beneficial. And most folks, a lot of the people I talk to, they're like, yeah, we're trying to figure out how to bring more women in, more minorities, bring the diversity. And so a lot of the folks on the lower levels, they want to help make change.
Hello and welcome back to the Cybrary podcast. I'm your host, Will Carlson, the Senior Director of Content here at Cybrary, and I am very privileged today to be joined by yet another of our Impact Hub partners, Women of Cyberjutsu, the one and only Mari Galloway. Mary, correct me here. Mary, great. And to have a conversation about what it is that Mary's organization does, what they're about. We'll talk a little bit about her path and how she got to where she is and kind of the lessons learned along the way. And then we'll talk specifically about, I'm sure, Mary, both being a woman breaking into cybersecurity and being a woman of color breaking into cybersecurity, and some of the struggles that are inherent in that and what your organization really is about to help address some of those things. And we'll go from there. That sounds good to you, Mary.
Sounds perfect. Let's do it.
Okay, great. I'm going to step myself out of the way and let you tell the audience a little bit about who you are, kind of how you came to where you're at, and what the mission of your organization is all about.
So like you said, I am Mari Galloway. I live in Las Vegas right now. I moved out here to work for one of the casinos here to do cybersecurity, help them build a vulnerability management program at the casino. Great experience. If you're interested in learning more about casino security, let me know. It involves a lot of travel, a lot of cool people you meet. You get to meet a lot of the back of the house folks when it comes to what goes on in a casino. I started as a network engineer back in 2009 for a company called Accenture in the DC area. I was government contracting, so did that for 7 years. Worked for Homeland Security at US CERT, now CISA. Worked for Department of the Army. Worked for various different organizations before I made the leap from government to private sector. So I am currently a sales engineer for a major security vendor. I won't say which one, but I work in SOC automation, so helping organizations transform their SOCs and help them automate their processes and give their analysts more time in the day to do more fun threat hunting kind of stuff. I found Cyberjutsu in 2013. I was looking for a study group. I had failed the CISSP a few months prior. Yeah, and I was mad. I missed it by 4 points.
Oh,
4. I was
I don't
so
know
hurt.
if that's better or worse.
I don't know if it was 1 question or 3 questions.
Oh.
And this is prior to the newer version of the test. So it was 250 questions, 6 hours. And so I was more upset that I had to pay another $600 or $700 than taking the test over again. And but I needed to get the certification because somebody said, "Hey, I'll give you a job if you get the certification." So my contract was ending in North Carolina. I found a study group in DC, and that's kind of how I ran into Cyberjutsu, and how I kind of got stuck. Lisa Jiggets, our founder, was like, "Hey, I like how you think. Come be on my board." I was like, "Oh, this is cute. A little after school club." Here we are 10 years later.
Yeah, you stuck around with that club for a hot minute, didn't you?
Yeah, a hot minute. And it's been impactful. It's been powerful. It's been empowering to see the women that come to the workshops, that come to the conferences, that come to volunteer, and just how their confidence increases and how they're able to, move and navigate in the space. It's one of those things that you can't really find anywhere else unless you're in that give back, the volunteer space, the nonprofit space. And so It's been good.
It is so interesting to me. I know, I've had the privilege of having conversations with a number of our Impact Hub partners, and it's always so amazing, sometimes in the worst of ways, honestly, of I firmly believe that in order for us to succeed as cybersecurity professionals, what we really need is a diversity of thought and a diversity of solutions. And when you parse that against what our industry can tend to look like, I mean, I'll admit sometimes, Mari, it's like, Mary, how are we missing the boat? Like, when you look across the room and everybody looks like me, or admittedly, if everybody looked like you, I don't know that the expression of that matters nearly as much as it needs to be different,
It needs to be
because
different,
we
right?
all approach problems and solutions so differently based on our
Mhm.
background, based on our upbringing, based on our hair, based on our unique expression of kind of just even just life as an individual is so important
Right.
that I guess all that to say, it just makes me so thankful that there are organizations like yours that help us improve the diversity of our industry, because I believe it's so very critical to success as a field.
And it
When we
starts with
don't,
the
it's going to be really
employers.
hard.
It starts with the employers too. They have to be open. They can't just say we want diversity of thought, we want diversity of this. They have to actually be open and like put forth the effort to actively recruit. One of the things we would do here in Vegas is at the casino, we'd have a it was like a day where all of the different departments would come in and they'd have like a representative and they would talk about, working in the beverage section or working at front desk or working in cyber. And so the kids would come to us and they'd be like, I never thought about cybersecurity as a career, right? And none of the employers are going into the high schools in these areas because they're like, well, they're not talented enough, they're not smart enough. But these are the kids that are right next to cyber, right next to the technology. You know what I'm saying? Like you need them.
Boy, Mary, I tell you what, I've got 3 kids of my own, and I like to think, having been an IT and a security professional for a number of years, that I've got a leg up on them, but I'm just waiting on that thing to come through where I realize, well, those sorry, how did they get around that? And it's going to happen. If admittedly it's not already, I promise you. Like, they are so
Yeah,
much smarter with technology than me, because they
they
were
live it.
raised with it.
They
It's
they were
core to
raised
who they are.
right. They didn't have to learn it. They just learned it because that's just they were born with a phone in their hand or a tablet in front of their face.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely amazing. So, help me understand a little bit about, what, I understand why Cyberjutsu exists and kind of who you are there to serve, but what are some of the things that you offer to your community of professionals or aspiring professionals to kind of help them succeed in those roles?
So, as members of the organization, the one thing we like to do is provide low cost or free training opportunities, and not just training around like, okay, get this certification. Here's the Security Plus training, or you need this certification. Here's this training, but training around concepts that people will use every day. So, Python programming, we have that coming up soon. It's a workshop on how to program in Python and how to do security stuff in Python. Things you could actually use today. You can automate some of the stuff that you do using Python or PowerShell or any of that stuff. And so we want to make sure that our training and those opportunities um, help our members hit the ground running when they get done. We also offer leadership opportunities through volunteering for different committees we have, for planning for the conference. We need help with that. If anybody's interested in volunteering, we go to conferences together so that people don't feel like they're alone, and we do lobby cons. We also get access to a lot of free tickets to RSA, B-sides, Black Hat, all these different conferences around the world so that we can help them bring more diversity into those conversations and also give exposure to our members and volunteers. What else do we do? Games, cyber games. We love cyber games. So coming up next month, we have Wicked Six cyber games at the end of the month, and it's 3,000 women from around the globe, 24 hours playing games, um, listening to conversations in some of their native languages. We did this last year, so that was really, really a cool thing because folks that may have never had the opportunity to understand cybersecurity, they got the opportunity to understand it in their language. So it's more than just, hey, let's have these events. It's, hey, let's have these events and be intentional about who we're trying to reach and what we're trying to do.
That's such an interesting one to me. Cybersecurity is such a technical field, and I know living in an area that is very bilingual here in the United States myself, the quickest way I could tell whether somebody was a bilingual speaker or their native language was not English was
Mhm.
how many technical words they knew
Ah,
in that tongue. So
whoa.
for me here, it's Spanish. So when you ask technical or legal or medical terms of somebody that's a Hispanic speaker, it's like, do they know it in Spanish or do they actually use it in a mix of Spanish and English?
Mm,
So that's so interesting to me, being able to hear those things presented in your native language has
yeah,
had to be, I imagine, hugely empowering for everybody
yeah,
involved.
yeah. And I listened to a few of the sessions and I was like, I have no idea what they're talking about, but I'm so excited that they're talking about it. They could be talking crap about me, right? But the fact that it's in another language and it's reaching more people than we can reach. That's where the impact is. That's where the power is.
Yeah, it's so interesting too, right? So here from my seat at Cybrary, myself and the content team talk a lot about cognitive load
Okay.
and how much we have to stop and process and think through
Mhm,
all of these
mhm,
other things that kind of muddy the message. And language is such a powerful one of those, right? So if I'm trying to take in new information that's already complicated, but I'm having to run it through a translation layer of that's not my native tongue, like how much harder that is. That
mhm.
hats off to you all for doing that. That's a really, really cool
And
thing.
we do that in conjunction with, I don't know if you know the company Play Cyber. Um,
Mhm.
our board president runs a cybersecurity marketing firm, and so one of her branches is Play Cyber, where they focus on the cyber athlete, and so we do a lot of programming with them to build up this cyber athlete and get them involved in the games and that kind of stuff. It's actually really really cool.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I wonder, one of the things I know that you and the organization are really passionate about, and it's probably not ironic that I was just having another conversation on a separate call about the importance of networking and how impactful that is to breaking into the space. I wonder if you could, talk with me a little bit about that, how that shows up for you, why that's important.
Yeah, so networking is super important. For me personally, I think I've gotten most of my jobs through networking. So, um, that's how powerful it is. I think there was one job where I actually had to apply for something first, and then I got the interview. But every job that I've ever had, it's because, one, somebody helped me get my foot in the door, and then two, I was able to sell myself to whoever was hiring. And that's really important. So it's not just about the networking, but it's about being able to sell yourself. But um, being unafraid to go out and talk to people. I tell folks, I did a LinkedIn learning course, and I tell folks in there, if you're nervous, if you're introverted, and you're like, I don't really want to go to these kind of events and meet people on LinkedIn. Start there. Find three people that have similar interests or similar things that you want to do in your career. Connect with them. Say, hey, I saw your profile. I think we could do some things together or whatever. Tell them who you are. Tell them how you can help them, and start that dialogue because that's really important. Um, and then it's not just the first interaction; you have to continue the conversation, right? So it doesn't have to be every day or every week, but once a month, drop a line and say, "Hey, I remember you telling me about your daughter that likes this. Here's some cool stuff that's happening in the area, or something, whatever it is." But you got to keep that relationship and that dialogue going because people will forget. We're all busy. Um, but networking is super important. We try to have networking events all the time, whether it's through the workshops or happy hours or hey, let's just get on a session and talk through challenges. What are we working on? Try hack me or uh, Pico CTF or Cybrary stuff or whatever it is. Let's work together on this stuff. And we use that as a networking piece too, because you're meeting new people and you're having to have those conversations of like, this person's pretty smart. Let me reach out and build that connection.
Yeah, it's so interesting, right? I mean, again, I had the privilege of just getting off a webinar where we were talking with a number of people about how do you begin to break into the space, and there were so many people there that were, unfortunately, like, well, I've been looking for 4 months, I've got a master's in cyber, I just don't know
Mm,
what to do, and obviously on a webinar you can't solve all the problems for
right.
all of the people attending, but I have in my career and in my time mentoring run into so many people that it feels like they know they need to network, they don't necessarily know how to go about doing it, and we tend to create, and I can imagine that it's worse, being a minority breaking into a largely homogenous field of what I don't know what to say, or what are they going to say, or do I really have the skills, or the imposter syndrome is so bad as it is, and then you just tack on layers above that, and that hits me, that hits home for me a little bit. That like with organizations like what Cyberjutsu does is it's just people just like you.
Just that it's just right. And I suffer from, sometimes I walk in the room like, God, the only one again. But I use that as a strength, right? Because they don't know my story. They don't know what I've gone through. They don't know anything about me. So this is my opportunity to sell me, to sell my organization, to sell the work that I do. But it's nerve wracking. I do it all the time now with my day job. I go to customer sites and I'm the only female, and it's a bunch of dudes in the group, and it's just like, here we go. But that's not a bad thing, right? Because it's forcing me to have more confidence and speak up and speak what I need to do. It's scary. It's scary as heck. I'm not gonna lie, but it's been very beneficial. And most folks, a lot of the people I talk to, they're like, "Yeah, we're trying to figure out how to bring more women in, more minorities. Bring the diversity." And so, a lot of the folks on the lower levels, they want to help make change. Um, and it's not necessarily our responsibility to do that, but we can help with that. We can have those conversations and, call people out when it's like, hey, you can't say that, or you can't do that. And it's not how you treat people, that kind of thing. Um, but yeah, it's going to be scary, but don't be afraid. Embrace it, jump in there, be authentic. People are like, don't be authentic. I'm like, I have red hair and a mohawk. So,
You know what? I know it's tough when your goal is to get a job in a field that you want and hopefully to have a paycheck. But I don't know if they've got problems with your hair, then I'll go somewhere else.
listen,
Thanks.
you would be surprised. We can talk about that offline, but you'd be surprised.
Oh, and I'm sure being a
Yeah,
sales engineer, like you run into it often. Like you probably have that. The look that a person on the other end of the call gets. It's like,
yep,
okay,
yep.
this is
Yep,
going to
yep.
be one of those
This is
calls,
going to be
isn't
one of those calls. Okay, cool. Um,
it?
luckily, none of my customers have ever had an issue. So,
That's great. Yeah. We can
um,
be so vain and trivial about such silly little things. I love what you said though about it being a strength, because I think what an amazing opportunity for somebody that's not like everybody else to come in with authority and speak with confidence
mhm,
and be memorable.
that part,
Like
that part.
I don't want to compare myself to the struggles that some people endure trying to break into this field, but for me, I kind of look like, in a lot of ways, everybody else. So to stand out and to be different sometimes can be its own sort of challenge. And again, not comparing them as even being closely the same, but I think we do have to be mindful of what are my strengths? How can I make a difference? Like, and I do think again, if we really all believe that the place of diversity of thought and opinion and approach in cybersecurity is so important, then we should live on that.
We should live on, yeah,
You should spring forward from that and make that
exactly.
part of who you are and your value. And if somebody doesn't see that value, go talk to
Probably not
somebody
the
else
right
who
place to
does.
be, right? That part, and it's not even just gender or race or ethnicity. It's also you know encouraging and bringing folks in with disabilities. There's COVID. I swear, while it sucked for a lot of people, COVID opened up the perimeter of every organization to where they can now reach into rural areas and reach into folks that they couldn't do before. Like, you're giving these people that don't have access an opportunity to change their life, to change their situation. And it's just like, you guys have so much power and you don't tap into that power.
Yeah, and I think it's so amazing to your point. Like I know Cybrary is fortunate to have a partnership with Melwood's Ability
Hmm.
program, and they reach into neurodiverse communities.
Okay.
And but they say it's right there on the top, right? They're neurodiverse. The way they approach problems, the way they solve problems, the way they see solutions is so different. And it's not better or worse. It's just that. It's
That's
just
different.
different. And
Exactly.
that can be a superpower for some problems. Yes, it can be a struggle in other areas, but I think for me and for, I think us at Cybrary, it's safe to say that you have to approach the whole person.
Yep. Yep.
And I don't know, I've never worked with anybody in my life, myself included, that was perfect and amazing. We all have our baggage, we all have our hangups, we all have things we're good at and things we're miserable at, and there's all probably parts of our jobs that we're not good at and somebody else is better at, and
Right.
that's just part and parcel.
That's life. There's always going to be somebody that can do something better. And there's nothing wrong with that. You should embrace it. Like, oh, good. I don't have to do that part of it because you can do this much better than me and I can focus on something else. You know?
100%. I wonder, so, having said how important networking is and connecting with humans and, as humans, right? And identifying their strengths and their weaknesses and how you can help them and how they can help you. It's so important. And there are many organizations, Cyberjutsu being one among them, doing amazing work. But particularly for women that are wanting to come into cybersecurity, like, is it as simple as joining a group like Cyberjutsu? Is that, if I do that, I ticked the networking box and now I'm set.
So no, it's not that simple. You got to put some work in. But getting with an organization and volunteering, right? Contributing, even if you're brand spanking new, you have a skill. Doesn't matter what the skill is. Like if you're coming from business, okay, volunteer and help with the business side of the organization. If you come from one of our members, Tracy, InfoSec Sherpa, she was a librarian.
I got a chance to do a podcast with
I love
Tracy, and
her.
I reference her so often because it's such an amazing
It
path
is.
in that people just go, "Wait, what?" It's like, yeah,
But she's
Tracy
got
was
the
a
skills
librarian and now she's in
of
cyber threat intelligence, and the way that
right.
she thinks and solves problems and
Exactly.
catalogs information makes her
Exactly.
uniquely talented to do that kind of work.
To do that kind of work. And it's like you have a skill. Teachers, retail workers, you have customer service experience. You can go on the sales side of things. You can, I mean, there's so many different avenues that people can go in. I think most folks are focused on being pen testers, not realizing that there's red team. So there's vulnerability management, there's pen testing, there's GRC, there's blue side of things with forensics and incident response and SOC, and there's training and education, and there's just all of these different areas that you can go into with your skill set. And then transition from once you're in, you transition. Joining an organization is the first step. Networking is the second step. Showcasing your skills and talents and things that you're working on is another step. So if you're working on, some cyber challenges, okay, showcase that. Do some write-ups, talk about it, put it on your LinkedIn.
Build a GitHub with your Python
Get on
scripts.
GitHub with your Python, exactly. Like, um, just putting yourself out there. And a lot of folks will say, "Well, I didn't have to put myself out there to get blah blah blah." Yeah, that's great, but we're in the time of social media, and we're in the era of everything has to be on the internet. So put your stuff on the internet. You don't have to put your personal life. Just put the stuff you're working on. You know, um, and stay connected. The biggest thing I tell everybody: take initiative because nobody's going to hold your hand. Nobody's going to come and say, "Hey, Mary, I'm going to hold your hand and walk you through your entire 40-year career in cybersecurity," because no.
They've got their own stuff to do, right?
Their own stuff to do. But take the initiative. If somebody gives you an opportunity, follow up. Make sure you jump on that if it fits for what you're trying to do. Because it's super easy to burn bridges in this space right now. And sometimes you have to burn a bridge. But that should be your last result. That should be the last thing you do. It shouldn't be the first thing you do. And so you want to make sure you're doing those things. And then connect with me on LinkedIn, of course. And then we can connect people.
No, I think that's absolutely right. You talk about showcasing what you do, and I think that's so very important. Like I think there's a little bit of a formula emerging here, right? Like connect with other people to help you. Find a mentor. Find somebody. Like I always encourage people. It's so interesting to me in talking to people that want to break into the field and like somebody that decides they want to be a CISO, like they want their mentor to be a CISO. And I always encourage them. I was like, that's fine. That's a great perspective to have. But what's the next step from where
Right.
you're at right now? And they go, oh, I don't know. And it's like, well,
Well,
did the
it's not
CISO know?
Scisso.
Because the CISO's probably been so far removed from that next step that they can't really even advise you there. So don't don't narrow your view of who your mentor can be either. Like help
Yeah.
can come from so many places. Like again, have a diversity of opinion there too. Like don't take one person's word for it. Like I want to be a pen tester, so I'm only going to talk to a pen tester. Well, how many other fields are you not hearing from because you're not willing to talk to somebody that does something different because you think you know what it is that you want and that you
Yep.
need?
And you probably don't even want to be a pen tester. It probably sucks for you, but because that's what you know, and that's what you hear. And you can have more than one. You don't have to have the same one mentor. You can have multiple. Um, I've got plenty of mentors. I have a whole my advisory team that I call them my cheerleaders. So I've got a bunch of folks that are different positions. Entrepreneurs, engineers, VPs, directors, CEOs, because they all have a wealth of knowledge, and I can go to them and say, "Hey, I need your help. I need your assistance."
But I
What
thought you were supposed to have one person that always got it right and told you exactly what to do.
That's me. That's me myself. I'm the only one that's right, but no, but it's over my geez. I said 2009, right? So 2013. So this will be my 14th year in tech and cyber. I've had a lot of different folks that have mentored me that don't even realize that they were doing that. Like, and those are the kind of the mentor relationships that I like. Um, they're not forced. It's not because you have these qualities, we're going to match you with this person because you may not even like the person.
Oh,
I mean,
I'm
it's
so
great.
glad you said that. Like that's near and dear to me, having been a mentor on the Cybrary community. And again, that's just one expression of a group that is there
Right.
for that. There are so many others. So find one that resonates with you, but it's so interesting to see somebody come in and be so pushy about needing one mentor and they want to have regular face-to-face time and they're just so restrictive about what that looks like, and it's hard for me because that presumes that you're going to find the right person the first time around
First
with
time.
all the answers for you,
Mhm.
that has an exhaustive view of what you need to do,
Uh-huh.
how you need to get there. And again, we narrow it to that one little thing when again it's the diversity of opinion and experience that matters most, because you just don't know what you don't know until you start talking to people, and it's up to you as the person that's getting that advice at the end of the day to still figure out what advice you're going to take and what you're not.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Don't expect your mentor to tell you what to do and to pave the way. To your point, like, oh, here, let me hold your hand and get you your next. That's not how it's going to work. It's work.
It's work, and you have to put the work in. And even when you have a mentor, your mentors tell you to do stuff. Like, here, do this assignment, or here, do this activity or this exercise, and you better do it when you come back to talk to them the next time. Otherwise, they're not going to want to be your mentor anymore if you don't listen.
Yeah, yeah, that's a tough one too. It's like, "Wait, do you want me to do it for you? Because that's not how this is like, that's not doing anybody a service." Yeah, 100%. Um, I know you've got a conference coming up pretty soon. Tell us
Yes.
a little bit about that.
Cyberjutsu Day. So we've coined a day in June every year for Cyberjutsu Day, and it includes our conference, Cyberjutsu Con. This will be the fourth one that we've done, the second one in person and virtually. It'll also have our 10th annual Cyberjutsu Awards event happening afterwards. So right now, the call for papers for both of those are open. If you want to speak, if you want to get on a panel, if you want to do a workshop, um, sign up. We have a great crew of folks who are going to review all of those CFPs and select who we feel is going to be a good fit for the event. It's usually workshops that we have. We'll have 4 or 5 different workshops on different things like pen testing, forensics, threat intel. We'll have conversations around career and how to develop your career and how to brand. And we'll have some stuff in the Career Center for reviewing resumes and interviewing and headshots. And then we have our main track talks of just emerging technology, stories from the field, things. Pretty much, our goal is when you leave out of Cyberjutsu Con, at the end of the day, you have tangible things that you can take and do at work on Monday. And then the awards, we're recognizing women, and we have a category for the allies that say, "Hey, you've done amazing work with the community. You've done a lot of good stuff, a lot of cool things." We're thinking about introducing a partner award this year, to highlight some of our partners, outside of just having their logo and talking about them. Um, but it's a really fun day. It's not super formal. You don't have to dress up in suit and tie. If you want to, you can. I will not be in suit and tie. I will probably be in something fashionable like always. because I like fashion and I want people to realize that you don't have to look a certain way to be in the space. Yeah, to get to the higher levels, you might have to do some things, you might have to change some things up, but um, you don't have to be in suit and tie all day. You don't have to be in hoodies all day. You can be who you are.
Oh, but if you're a pen tester, you have to wear the hoodie and gloves.
There you go. We might order some hoodies for the conference this year.
I
We
wonder, you
might.
said something about, the calls for papers, and it makes me think, something I think I know how you'll answer this question, but you have to be an expert to speak at a conference, right?
Nope. Nope, not at all. Newbies can come too. And if you submit, and there is an option that says I'm a new speaker, I'd like a mentor. We do try to partner newer speakers with somebody to help them develop their presentation and what they're going to talk about. And those sessions are usually about 25 minutes or so, because it's really scary and nerve wracking to give your first presentation on a stage. I've done it a million times, and every single time I still get nervous.
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
I
it's so funny,
still feel like
right?
I'm
It's
gonna
like
fall off the stage and
nerves are a human experience. Like
Yeah,
you can't. I think if they weren't there, then you should be more concerned.
right, exactly.
Everybody's nervous.
But yeah, newbies, we actually like we want the seasoned folks, but we really, really want more new speakers, especially women and minorities, to come in and just talk about their experience, talk about something that's important to them as it relates to cybersecurity, talk about, the AI stuff that's happening right now. And like how do we as security professionals navigate this? Those kind of things. We want to hear that and our members want to hear that. So
Yeah, and I know here at Cybrary we talk often about, and we're at work, hard at work as hard as we can be every day, trying to solve the capacity, capability, and
mhm.
confidence problems. We talk about kind of the three C's. Like, there's just not enough people with all the skills needed for us as an industry to do what we need to do. And aside from the 3.4 million, I could
We
care
get
less about
it.
the number, and I don't like to get down in the weeds there, because I think just derails the bigger conversation, and that's that there are open roles that employers are struggling to fill, not because there aren't people applying for them, but to your point, like, there aren't people applying for them that can demonstrate the skills that they're going to step into the role to solve a business problem tomorrow. And that may be because they don't have the skills. That may be because they aren't articulate and haven't practiced interviewing. There's thousands of reasons for that. And I think so often we get in this really unhealthy Spider-Man meme, finger pointing, like, whose fault is it? Well, it's all these job posts that have asked for CISSP for entry-level careers. Like, yeah, I'll admit that's absolutely ridiculous.
Right.
Full
But
stop. Totally ridiculous. But do you want to fixate on that and say that's the problem? Or do you want to, I think what, Cyberjutsu is really trying to empower women to do is, like, invest in yourself, pour into
invest
yourself,
in
connect
yourself.
with the right people, solve the problems that are in front of you. Like, we may even all be able to, with a clear head, admit, yeah, some of these problems shouldn't be problems today.
That
But
part, that part. But it is. And it's mostly a confidence thing, honestly. I've heard members say I won't apply for something because I don't meet the qualifications 100%. There's jobs that I won't apply for because I'm like, I don't meet the qualification 100%. But I'm like, but I have the skill.
yeah,
Like,
and
do
I
it.
guess who should be the judge of that? You
That
or
part.
the
You
hiring
are the
manager?
hiring person. Right. The hiring person should be the judge of that, not me. But
Don't short yourself the opportunity before you even try.
this is true. And so, I apply for things and I'm just like, yeah, but what do I really want to do? And I think the other problem is people don't know what they want to do. And so it makes it difficult. And they see on social media, Twitter is the worst for this. I make, $200,000 as an entry level person coming into cyber. Like, really? That's not normal for everybody. So
Yeah, we have
you
such a
saying
celebrity mentality as a culture anyway, right? Like, we all wanna be the thing that very few people can be, and there's such a degree of gray in the middle there that's totally fulfilling when you align that work with your purpose as a person.
that part. What's your why? Like, it's great you got $200,000, but maybe that person knows how to negotiate the heck out of a salary, and they negotiated the heck out of that salary.
And
And
they
so
may be absolutely miserable in that role because they hate
yeah,
it,
because
or
they hate it.
dealing with imposter syndrome that's unbelievable every single day, and their personal mental life is totally
Yep.
abysmal, and, like, you just don't.
You
Yeah,
just
I always have heard, and I believe this, that comparison is the thief of joy.
it totally is. Oh, but we do it. So we all do it. And we don't even do it. It's not necessarily intentional. Sometimes it just happens. And social networks don't make it easier, but that's all fake. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not real. And even though parts of it might be, we can't focus on that part of it. I'm guilty of it sometimes too. Because I'll look and be like, dang, they're doing some really good stuff. And I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, so are we. Let's partner. Let's figure out how we can work together as a group. I'm all for partnering with other organizations to help move the mission and vision forward for all of us.
Yeah, and as much as we as an industry struggle with, in some ways, diversity and inclusion, in other ways, I've not been in another career field in my entire life that was as inviting as
Mm.
cybersecurity in general. Like, yes, are there pockets of the cybersecurity Twitter dumpster fires that you can find? Totally there are. Like, just don't put yourself in those communities. Like,
Right.
avoid those people.
Avoid
There
them.
are so many supportive, inclusive,
Hmm.
helpful cybersecurity communities, and I think it comes, at least for me, my opinion, for what that's worth, is it's a little bit of shared suffering, right? Regardless of what that is. Like, very few other roles can you go to work every day where an adversary has meaningfully tried to undo your work from the
Boom.
previous day. Like, we
Thank you.
are we
Right.
really do fight an adversary daily.
Daily.
Like, so
Daily.
many of our content creators and instructors and researchers, when Log4j hit, like,
Oh,
I'll
please.
share a little bit. From the Cybrary perspective, our content production ground to a halt.
Because they had to focus on that.
They were all doing their work.
They were doing work.
80 hours a week of it, bless them all. And I know a lot of they're like, "Ugh, I don't ever want to go back to that again." And it was really, really, really tough. But I think that's the kind of the to me, that's the foundation of the community that we live in. Like, when you
Right.
have that kind of suffering and you have that kind of passion for
Yep.
a calling that I believe cybersecurity is, like, communities spring up around those kinds of
Oh yeah,
things.
definitely. That's why I work where I work, because our goal is to. This is not a sales pitch, but our goal is to help organizations prevent or block those things from happening. So understanding your attack surface, understanding your assets, understanding the holes in the environment and where things can go, and helping with threat hunting type of stuff, because that's what's going to. The SOC is changing. So anybody that wants to go into a SOC, the SOC is changing. Um, we saw with Chat GPT that just popped up, and like people are using that to do things. That's only going to grow, and that's going to start trickling into the tools and the products that these organizations use, right? Um, so one way for folks trying to break into the industry is to follow the trend and see where that puck is moving towards, right? Okay, automation. Let me start to look at this. AI. Let me start to research and look at this so that I'm ahead of the game and I know what's going on, because that's going to be the difference between you and somebody else that doesn't do that work. That's
I
the
can't tell you
initiative.
how many people I've had in my IT career that said, "Oh, I don't wanna automate." It's like, "Well, why not?" "Well, it takes time and I could just solve the ticket faster." "Okay, well, how many times have you
Wrong.
done that thing?" And then, once you get them past that hurdle, they're like, "I don't wanna automate myself out of a job." And I was like,
You won't.
You won't. You'll
You won't.
automate yourself into a job because, not to be too abysmal about it, but you might be automating other people out. So do you wanna be the one automated out, or do you wanna be the one automating? Like, and again, that's
Yeah,
maybe a little bit of a callous way to approach that, but where do you wanna be on the spectrum? The one with the skills to help the organization and, to your point, to follow the puck? Or do you wanna be the one that the puck's not anywhere around anymore and you've seen yourself out of the game?
exactly. Yeah, and that's the difference between, and that's in any industry. That's the difference between the good workers and the great leaders. They know that they're thinking ahead versus just in the present. So
Yeah, and I think we have a disproportionate amount of those in cybersecurity again, because I firmly believe that this is truly a calling, and like it always pains me a little bit to hear people that, when you ask them and you're interviewing with them as a mentee, like, well, why do you want to get into cybersecurity? It's like, oh, it seemed interesting, and I hear there's six-figure jobs.
yeah, that's exactly why they want to do it. It's like, okay, but do you have a passion for anything? Like, what do you like to do?
Yeah, and then
Okay,
they don't know, and then it's just such a big disconnect because this is, to our previous discussion about things like Log4j, this is hard work.
it's hard work.
It's constantly changing, constantly
You
evolving,
got
and
to
if you're not
stay
keeping up,
on.
there's somebody that
Yeah,
will be, that's interested in your position, and that doesn't, I mean, again, I don't wanna paint it as it's an adversarial thing because it's certainly not. Um, but it's a lot of work to do
it's a
this. I
lot
had
of work.
somebody tell me a long time ago that, Well, if you can see yourself doing anything else, go do that other thing.
But
And
it
I was really frustrated with him at saying that. I was like, I was insulted. I said, I cannot believe you just said that. But his advice was actually spot on. And it was
that's
trying to
true for
dig at,
any
are you
industry.
passionate about this thing?
Yeah, that's because it's gonna take money, it's gonna take time, it's gonna take sleepless nights, you know? Um, it's like the medical field, same thing. You gotta be passionate about this because if you're not, this might not be the place for you. So
Not everybody wants to hear that message, do they?
they don't. We a few years ago I posted that on Twitter, and I swear the Twitterverse went nuts and was like, I don't need to know my why for being in cyber. My why is because I want to make money. I said, okay, that's fine. But what happens if you get laid off? What happens if you get laid off and you can't find another job that's paying you what you were making then? Does that is money still your why for getting into cyber? It's fine that you want to get in it for cyber, but there needs to be another reason outside of just the money. Maybe I want to recession proof my life or whatever it is, but what's the bigger picture? Because when you get tired of this industry, this job, whatever it is, or frustrated, you're going to want to leave because you don't have a why for why you're doing it.
Yeah, so interesting. So again, I alluded earlier to kind of a formula here, right? So you got to get in and you got to connect with real people. You got to connect with them in real ways.
Yep.
You certainly need to have the skills and abilities to do the thing. Like you shouldn't be getting a job if you can't do the work.
Right.
You got to be able to represent yourself well and sell yourself. That's why it was so interesting and why I dug in on the call for papers, because I was pretty confident what the organization's opinions on that would be. And it's just such an amazing thing. Like I talked to so many people that they're so frustrated. They have a degree, they have a certification, they're coming from IT and they just can't get a role. And then you role play with them and interview, and they're just so uncomfortable. They cannot meaningfully make it through an interview because thousands of reasons, the reasons matter less than the outcomes.
Right. Right.
But you've got to be able to sell yourself. It's so very important with confidence,
Yes.
without being arrogant as well. Like that can be a real turnoff for some employers too. Like it's hard work, but I think that's such an interesting way to solve that problem. And, I understand in my conversation with you today that Cyberjutsu sits squarely in a place to try to address those things for women that are trying to break into or are in cybersecurity.
And I have the experience, so like I what people are facing, what they feel like right now, I've experienced that. I wasn't the greatest at doing interviews. I wasn't the most confident back in the day when I started. I had to I gained those skills and that confidence over time, but even still now sometimes I'm just like, "Oh, that person's smarter than me. I probably shouldn't be doing this."
You mean those CISOs didn't start as CISOs? They didn't just wake up and spring out of a head fully formed and they're ready to have a CISO role? And that's even assuming, and I don't mean to aggrandize a CISO, like that's not
They
the
might
ultimate
have
end state,
anybody,
right?
right?
Like security engineer, like fill in the blank of whatever role you wanted. Like they
Right.
didn't start there.
They had to start someplace, and when I got started, cybersecurity wasn't a big term yet. Um, Security was the thing. Homeland security was there because of 9/11.
Information assurance.
Information assurance, yes. Accreditation, certifications and accreditations. That's what I was doing, and so the whole buzz thing around cybersecurity, it's like, wow, okay, why didn't IA take off like this? Because IA wasn't pen testing or digital forensics. IA is papers and tests and boring stuff for people. And but it's not a bad place to be, honestly, because you learn the ins and outs of systems. I learned so much about Cisco devices in those roles, and I was like, Cisco's my thing. I'm out to be the CCIE times 8, whatever type. And then I was like, yeah, no, I don't want to go that high.
Living in that blasted command line for the rest of your life. Oh,
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm gonna stick to this side over here because security's fun, you know.
and you mentioned all the diverse roles, and I think back to the top of our conversation today. Like there's also like the sales engineer role, right? So it's such an interesting such an interesting kind of connection of having the technical skills, understanding a
Mhm.
product, understanding how to value align with that what that product solves to the organization that you're selling it into, helping them find success with the product, being articulate and putting a proposal together, or managing a POC, or
Yeah, answering
answering the questions for your internal team that they can't answer themselves for a customer. Like such a really interesting area to
very
exist.
dynamic. Yeah.
That some would say, well, Well, that's not a sock roll. That's not a pen test roll. No, it's not. But
It's not.
it's critically important. And I wager to say, Mary, I never had you as an SE, but I wish I had more that were like you, and I wish more security solutions providers had more security engineers and salespeople that were less concerned about peddling a solution and more concerned about solving problems, which you
Yeah.
mentioned at the
It
top.
I wasn't gonna be a sales engineer. A friend of mine has been trying to get me to be one my entire career. And I just took the role in March and I was just like, whoa. But I will say it's a very rewarding type of role because I still have to know all of my products. I have four. I have to know them like the back of my hand. I have to stay up to date with everything that's going on and all of the different updates and things like that. But it's
And
one of
then
those
know the
roles,
problems that they solve.
and exactly, like, how does this solve this person's use case? And the commissions don't hurt. I will say that. So you get your base salary plus the commission. So you can actually make more money on that side, but that's sales in general. There's a little bit of selling, but once you start to get comfortable in your own skin, and we have a lot of introverts that are sales engineers, and they're really really good. They can turn that on, and then they can turn it off when they need to. Um, so I definitely recommend people look at the sales engineering side, uh, solutions architect side. That's on pre-sales as well. Like those kind of roles, they're still technical. They're still very important, and they're still very useful.
No, that's great. So again, circling back here to make sure nobody missed anything, right? So uh, Mary and her organization, One More Cyberjutsu, is totally interested in helping you out, helping you break into the field, providing you the support that you need to be kind of a whole person in the role and to have everything that you need. Hats off to the organization. We're super thrilled to have you as an Impact Hub partner, and we look forward to continuing to partner to bring our solution, into your organization and the people that you serve. All again for the purpose of helping us solve the capability, capacity, and confidence problems in our industry today. If you want to break into the field and what we've talked about today is interesting to you, and especially if you're in the Nova or the DC metro area, conference coming up relatively soon, go on the website, connect with the organization. Mary, I'm confident that if people don't connect with you, your encouragement would be to find an organization and
On an
connect with
organization.
somebody.
Yep. And I can recommend most of the organizations that are probably on the Impact Hub page. I'm cool with all of them. And so we always will send people. We send folks back and forth between the organizations, and we partner on resources and things like that. So if it's not us, we'll help you find that home for you.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, why we're aligned and why we're all here, particularly the Impact Hub partners in Cybrary, is that we have a shared mission.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
We want to help people and we want to help the space, and this is kind of how we go to work doing that. Mary, thank you so much for talking with me today. It sincerely has been a pleasure. I hope a lot of people find Cyberjutsu, and have an amazing conference.
Yes, thank you. I hope to see all of you there.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thanks.